Testing, 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 testing. Welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast Indestructible Souls. Sorry for being late. And let me just start off right out the box. Today I really have to change directions. I had a special guest who was scheduled to come on today, and during our test run, as well as our discussion and trying to get everything set, I was having some technical difficulties. So we're gonna try again next week. And so I want to, we were going to talk about a lot of the political things that are going on everywhere from Trump to Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, and all those things. However, like I said, due to technical difficulties, so we're going to connect this week. You're going to get a different perspective. It's one of my high school friends. But we'll get to it next week. So I want to apologize for having to change up the format in the last minute. So, which means that I'm going to talk about several things in terms of sort of the political climate and how it's affecting us, how it's affecting people in general. And so what's going on is, for those of you who know, I'm a licensed therapist and I see people daily, within this last year during 2020. I run a private practice by myself. It's just me. And I've gotten on several insurance panels and all that good stuff. So I see it for one person, I see a lot of people. I work 6 days a week. Probably shouldn't, but for now I do. So until that changes, it is what it is. But people are underestimating or maybe ignoring or do not pay attention to how this current political climate is affecting people. But not only affecting our kids, it's affecting, I get phone calls from couples who are interracial couples. And I'll back up and I'll talk what political climate I'm talking about. But people are on top of the COVID and on top of, the pandemic. We are, in my opinion, the closest things to the 60s, the 70s, the 50s that we've seen, at least in my lifetime. Just recently turned 48, and I've never seen anything quite like the climate that we're in today. Read about it. But as we get closer to November, I think tensions are going to go higher and higher and higher. And so today I'm going to talk about how we can get ahead of that. So here's the political climate I'm talking about. We just had, we got Mr. Stump in the office, Mr. Donald Trump in the office, and we got that. We got all of his propaganda and political jargon and positioning. Now we have the grand jury who did not indict the murderers of Breonna Taylor, which I think most people in this country, black people in this country, didn't expect very much. Took too long, for one. So we didn't expect any justice there. We have more and more right wing fascists, if right wing groups feel emboldened by this president and the current administration. We're seeing hypocrisy every day. And what I mean by hypocrisy is literally something that black people have known about the system since day one, which is they will change the rules in the middle of the game and not care about it. But it's the game that they play and it's the rules that they set. And so here we are going to have a new Supreme Court justice pretty soon when we're days away from an election. But when Obama did it, they blocked it and laughed about it, which is funny to me. So I'm just going to talk about different things that, you know, that are stressing people out, that are real stressful. And here's the other thing is that people are, due to stress and due to a bunch of other things, people are getting sicker and have pre-existing conditions. And the first thing they want to do is repeal Obamacare, regardless of how you feel about it. Regardless of how you feel about it, people need health care. But for some reason in this country, it's become political due to capitalism. So, so a lot of these things are stressing people out. On top of, we have social distancing or distant learning, which is affecting our kids, especially if we're not prepared. So these are kids not being able to go outside, not exercising, not seeing their friends. And I'm talking elementary school kids, I'm talking middle school. These are all of the problems that are now coming to me, and I assume and I'm pretty sure that other therapists are seeing these same types of problems. So there is, on top of our day-to-day stresses or stressors, we're now living in a political climate where just walking outside is stressful. Just walking outside. To this week, and this is just sort of my prelude to, some of the things. This week I decided that I will be getting a firearm. Have not have not felt the need to have a firearm. Here's the reason why. I'm a believer, and since I've not carried a gun, never needed a gun. Since I have not carried a knife, haven't needed a knife. One of the things my grandmother used to always teach is if you're carrying a knife for a gun, you're looking for trouble. And up until this point, she's been right. I haven't needed one. But I have to tell you, I feel unsafe in this political climate that even walking in the store, driving down the street, it feels like my life can turn in a moment. Not because I'm doing anything wrong, just because a situation can occur and I feel like things can go south very quickly. Here's the other reason why I feel like I need a firearm. Is my prediction, my belief is the closer we get to November, the closer we get to the election, I hate to say it and I don't want to put it out in the universe, but I'm a common sense kind of person. The closer we get to the election, the more and more we're going to see violence, racism, and other things in the street. It's just what I believe. And the idiot in office has already setting the stage that if he's not reelected, that people who feel emboldened will either physically try to suppress voters from going to the polls. And here's going to be the assumption. If you're a person of color, the assumption is going to be that you're not voting for Trump. So they're going to suppress votes in districts that they know that's not pro-Trump. You're going to see protests at the polls, which in the past it was improper and not right, not okay to campaign or do political demonstrations outside of polling places. You're going to see certain districts closing polls early. You're going to see all kind of tricks and games. So what I want to talk about today is how can we as a collective get through this time when we're talking about distant learning, kids being stressed out, parents being stressed out because they have to now not only teach kids. I have a lot of parents who are coming to me now have to pay somebody to sit with their kids because or tutor their kids because they're not getting the same resources and assistance they would get at school. But also, whether it's single parents or both parents have to go to work, and so it's tough to get a kid to sit in front of the computer while you got to go to work and expect them to sit there, listen, and learn in this setting. So there's more stressors that we have not had to deal with in this 2020 that's starting to take a toll. We are now about to be in October. This whole pandemic took hold early, I guess, January, but really took hold in February, if you will. So there's a lot of stressors that we are faced with that what we're seeing now, people are breaking down. So this is for people in general, but when we talk about resources, this is going to affect our community more because we tend to either have less resources or we don't invest in the resources that our kids need. So I hate to be a pessimist. I don't know, am I saying it right? But I'm a realist and I see what's happening. I see what's happening. Here's the thing. The NFL and the NBA doing the things that they're doing is great, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And so we are on the verge of chaos in this country if we're not already there. We're on the verge of chaos. Now, let me explain why. Let me explain why I believe that. So, on top of being a therapist, one of the things I also study was sociology and sociology major. And one of the things I wanted to point out is a person can be reasonable, meaning if you talk to a person and you guys have a relationship, if you will, or a mutual respect, the person can be reasonable and you can have a reasonable conversation and then at some point agree to disagree. However, the collective, meaning the person can be reasonable, but people are unreasonable. Why is that important to understand? So here's why that's important to understand. All of us work with people of different nationalities, different racial backgrounds or cultural backgrounds. All of us know or have friends that are cool, different backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, different political beliefs, and so forth. However, in this climate, at some point, people have to make a decision based off of the collective. We see it all the time. And we just saw it in the news, and we see it in the news every day. So, and here's one example. I just read an article, I believe it was a pastor or some type of political figure. I want to say he was a pastor and a political figure in some state. Now, mind you, this person is supposed to be a pastor. Well, he is a pastor and a political figure. And I'm pretty sure if anybody of any particular nationality go to this person and say, I need prayer, I need counsel, I need guidance, regardless of the nationality, I'm pretty sure that this person under under religion and Christianity or whatever it may help a person. However, because he's now a part of the collective, and the collective is Trump supporters, they videoed this same pastor, preacher, political figure driving down the street with a Trump flag screaming white power. Now, why you might ask, why would there be a difference? Because, and here's the reason why there's a difference. People will always behave differently when they're held accountable by the collective. I used to see it all the time. I'm going to say it again. People will always act differently when they're held accountable by the collective. Case in point, if somebody who says they're, have certain political views, anybody can connect to a person or a few people. But what happens is, as a collective, I now have to decide which side I'm going to be on. And what we're going to see in these streets, and what we're going to see what happens is, people that we've called friend, people who have been to our houses, people who we have shared our lives with, are going to go with the collective. So what does that mean? You're going to, and what that means is that they're going to have to choose a side because they're going to be held accountable by their collective. So one of the things I used to, and I tell people all the time, when I worked in the correction setting, some of the best people I ever met, and I'm not talking to COs, I'm not talking to staff, but I'm talking some of the inmates, I'm talking some of the clients, some of the best people I ever met, the realest people you would ever meet. And I'm talking people who were tatted with swastikas, tatted with other stuff, and Hispanics who on the street or a part of their collective could not be seen hanging out with black people. All these, so just a different collective. They will show, what happens is you show a person respect, mutual respect or whatever, but there's always become a time, in a time of turmoil, and I used to always say this, in a time of turmoil, in a time of chaos, people are always going to have to choose because they're going to be held accountable to the collective. And so I used to always ask, why can't you do certain things? Why can't you be his friend? Why can't you be whatever? Why can't you sit down and have a conversation with this person? Because the answer used to always be is because now I have to answer to them. So what happens is, even though they're okay with me as a person, as a collective, they now have to choose sides. And we are literally in that space right now where Donald Trump has said he understands. Here's the thing. He understands that the only way he can hold on to his base and he can have any chance of being reelected is by division. And people have fallen for it. And so what happens in this climate, understand this. You have people who are scared that a certain other group of people are going to take away their rights, threaten them, and do all these other things, when the fact of the matter is we're in this together. But for some reason, people believe that a certain specific group, most likely minorities, are a threat to their American way. Understand, I said their American way. So here's what happens, and here's what's going to happen. When people are fearful of being held accountable by the collective, meaning the group of people, you're going to see certain behaviors that you're not going to believe. And these are going to be your neighbors. These are going to be people you went to work with. These are going to be the same people that you call friend. Now, there's nothing wrong with people having different political views, but we're past political views. People are being killed in the streets. And people are not only being killed, people are being threatened. Now, here's the thing. I just saw this article of in Portland of some group. I'm not going to say their name because I don't want to give them any kind of airtime or whatever. So now, because of Black Lives Matter, other factions have come out of the woodwork. But here's the problem. They're not based off of unity. They're not based off of justice. They're not based off of racial equality. It is to protect white supremacy. So here's what I'm suggesting as we get closer to November. Not only I will talk about how to deal with some of the stress in a minute, but this is my prediction and I see it coming, and I'm not Nostradamus or anything like that, but I got eyes. Because one thing that I've learned over the last few months is that Trump supporters oftentimes don't check facts. They listen to what he says and they listen to what his supporters say, and that's all they need. And so we're going to see a lot of tricks in the street the closer we get to November. So, and we have to be not only prepared, we have to, and it's almost sound cliche, have to stick together. So one of the things that I will suggest off the top, if you're taking your ballot to the polls, go as a group. Now, why would I say go as a group or don't go alone? Do you think a pack of wolves are going to attack a group of whatever, or will they pounce on the one? So if when you go to the polls, at a minimum, go in pairs, go in groups, go with somebody you know, and do not buy into the antics. Because guess what's going to be on the news? Them provoking you won't be on the news, but you retaliating will be. So if grandma needs to go to the polls because she's old school and she don't want to send her ballot in through the mail, somebody needs to take her. For a youngster who doesn't know who voting is new to them and you want them to have the experience, don't send them by themselves. Here's another thing. It is law. If you're working, your job has to give you 2 hours off on election day to go cast your ballot. And you don't have to use sick or vacation time. So if you say, I'm going to be late because I'm going to go vote, or if you say I have to leave because I'm going to go vote, they cannot penalize you. So don't let going to work or something like that sway you from going to go vote. Now, here's the other thing I suggest. If you're going to the polls, make sure you take your ID. You shouldn't have to, but make sure you take it. Now, here's another thing. So my grandmother was on the city council for 8 years, 2 terms, so I learned a little bit. One of the things they may try to do is challenge your signature or your ID or something, but you still get, what I'm saying is no, make sure you vote, but you still get to cast what they call a provisional ballot. So if they give you a hard time and they say, no, you can't vote, you still get to cast a provisional ballot, which means they then have to research it and then validate your vote. So don't be swayed and don't turn around. Here's the other thing. If you when you get your ballot, when you get your ballot in the mail, if you're voting by mail, send it in sooner than later, before election day. But if you have it on election day, you can drop it off to the polls. You don't have to put it in the mail. You can take it, seal it, and deliver it directly to your polling place. So that's my little pitch on the election, the political climate. And now here's the thing. So let's talk about the added stress that's been happening since all these things been going on. So I get multiple phone calls from parents who, but not just parents, but parents and their kids who are stressed out because, for one, the kids are struggling with the distant learning. Maybe they got ADHD, whatever, or they're just antsy because they're not with their friends. They're stuck in the house. And here's the true fact. A lot of kids learn with hands-on learning. They learn they might need some help from the aide. They might need to ask questions. I see a lot of kids who are afraid to ask questions because now all their classmates can hear or see them asking questions and then they get embarrassed. So they're not getting the help that they need. So one of the things I suggest in terms of just with the distant learning is setting a routine, but also setting time for some type of physical activity to burn off some energy, and setting up a system to where your kids, where there's a checks and balance that you could follow along and make sure that your kid is getting their work done, on top of communicating with the teacher. So those are just some other things. The other thing, or in terms of dealing with the stress of kids who aren't around their friends, who aren't able to get around and move about, is also setting up opportunities for them to get out of the house and socialize and that sort of thing. So whether it's setting up, play dates with cousins that don't have the COVID, if it's going to the park, anything to allow them to get the energy out and some of the angst out, right? And then also, because we're now dependent on them to learn on their own, is setting a reward system. I'm not talking spending a lot of money. A lot of times when people say reward system, they think you got to spend a lot of money. No. Is if they have a good day or if they're having a good day, we have to let them know. We have to praise them. We have to do certain things. Maybe we wait to the weekend. They could ride their bike longer. They could play video games longer, whatever it may be. But setting a reward system for them getting their work done. So those are just a few tips. Now, here's the other thing for us adults. When it comes to this current political climate, on top of the added stress of distant learning, having to teach our kids, having to pay for tutors, whatever it may be, just more added duties because of this pandemic. And on top of the pandemic, everything we see in the news. So I can't fix what's going on in Washington. I can't fix, in terms of, systematic racism, which affects a lot of people, financial stress, whatever it may be. So from a mental health perspective, here's a few things that I would suggest off the top. Is the first thing that I would suggest is we got to disconnect. What do I mean by disconnect? So, because bad news is so accessible, meaning you got it on your phone, you got it on TV, you got it on social media, at least an hour or more a day, you have to disconnect. Here's the thing. So, there's a book, and I forget the name of it, but it talked about the art of bucket dipping. So imagine your body a vessel that if when negative things happen, when people say negative things, it is taking your energy. And I don't mean necessarily your physical energy of running a mile. I'm talking your spirit, your energy. So you constantly have these things taken away. Now here's the other problem to that. People and things are taking your energy, and then you begin to take on other people's energy. What do I mean by that? You see something in the news that adds stress, and you begin to worry about affordable health care. You begin worried about all these things that you see on the news, and we begin to carry it, right? So what happens is when we are constantly connected to negative energy, when we are constantly connected to drama, when we are constantly connected to um, just bad news and things that are not fulfilling, we have to, as adults, at a minimum from an hour a day or whatever it may be, is to disconnect so we can then fill ourselves. What do I mean by that? Fill ourselves up. Here's the thing: turning off your phone, turning off your social media, you know, people calling with drama, asking you for favors, people calling you, telling you about somebody else's problems. Here's the thing: if it ain't your problem, you can't fix it, don't carry it. But disconnecting and telling people, I'll talk to you later. It could be turning off the TV or watching a TV show that you have to use absolutely no brain power. Just disconnecting. For some people, it's reading a book. For some people, it's listening to audio. It's disconnecting from negative energy and doing whatever it is you need to replenish your energy and your spirit. This might be praying. It could be anything other than bad news and negative energy. Here's the other thing, and I hate to say it, but the people around you, disconnecting from the negative energy and the negative people around you. I had a conversation a couple of days ago, and I think one of the gifts God has given me is, in the church they say discernment of spirits, but one of the things is I could feel a person's energy the moment they walk in the room. It's just, even as a therapist, I could feel the energy. And so sometimes one of the things that I have to do, even as a therapist, is after I'm listening to this client's story and their issues, is I have to cleanse out my office. And I don't mean vacuuming and all that stuff. I mean cleansing it out. Whether it's lighting sage, whether it's lighting the incense, it's pleading the blood of Jesus, all that stuff. But it's disconnecting from negative people and negative energy. Sometimes when a certain person calls, you shouldn't even answer the phone because it's going to be drama. So the first thing I'm saying is, in this climate, when there's so much stuff coming at us, we have to disconnect. Then that way we can get centered in whatever you do to get centered. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, in this day and time, it's going to be more important to plan, and to not only plan, but have a plan and be organized. What does that mean? The good thing is, when we talk about planning, people say, I don't have time to plan. But why don't you have time to plan? Because I have so much going on. One of the things, just to qualify it real quick, is for 20-some years, I was a manager, and we often talked about planning and organizing and so forth, right? One of the things that we often find ourselves, and not to get too technical, but most of us spend energy and time on things that are not urgent and not important. And so if you really look at some of the energy that you expend on a daily basis, how much of it is urgent, how much of it is really important. And so planning and organization helps you weed out the stuff that's not important or not urgent. So somebody may call you and tell you something, ask you for something, or a situation might happen. And then that takes us away from our routine, that takes us away from our center, if you will. And then we spend most of our time and energy and our emotional energy on something that's not urgent, not important, and then wonder why we're stressed out at the end of the day and haven't got anything done. So after we disconnect, I would say use 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, whatever it may take to plan and organize. Does that mean the plan is going to go exactly as expected? Probably not. But when things do go awry and you have a plan, it's easier to get back on course. Stop spending your emotional and mental energy on things that are not important and not urgent. I have a philosophy that I live by. Most people don't know, but I'll share it with you right now. My belief is most things we deal with or give energy to does not matter or will not matter 20 minutes later. How many times have you gotten news? How many times, even at work, somebody comes to you with something and then you get off kilter and dealing with this stuff, and then you get it done, and you might get it done the next day, and or you spend your energy on it, and then tomorrow it's not even a topic of discussion because it was never important in the first place. And I'm not talking. So, for instance, if we're talking about paying bills, okay, so all of us know when our bills are due, right? Um, Doctor's appointments, those are things that we have to go to. Obviously, work we have to go to. But one of the things that I like to call noise, a lot of us give energy to noise. And noise to me are those things that are not important and not urgent. And sometimes if we sit back, some of the things that we deal with, not only is it not going to matter 20 minutes later, it's not going to matter tomorrow. And so you've wasted good energy and a good spirit on something that does not matter. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you can sit and really think about, wow, this issue came up yesterday and I forgot all about it. The reason being is it didn't matter in the first place. But most of us get sucked into because it appears to be urgent, it appears to be important, but it's not. So the planning, the disconnecting, the planning, and then also not getting caught up in things that just does not matter. And oftentimes the things that don't matter is because it already belongs to somebody else and they sucked you into it. Stop allowing yourself to be brought into other people's lives and other people's drama. Here's what I mean, parents. Some of your kids are grown, but yet, and granted, we love our kids and we want our kids to do well. So sometimes we get sucked into their lives and they're going to do what they want to do anyway. Should we be there to support them? Yes. Should we be there to guide them? Yes. But should we take on their burden as if it's our own? Maybe there's some situations they are. But I'm talking about that mess and that noise of the day. Here's the case in point. Or here's an example. Let's just say one of your kids, maybe in high school or even college, they miss a deadline. Or they need something paid right away, whatever it may be. Okay. Most likely, that's something they should have dealt with along the way, should have dealt with a lot sooner. But it becomes our problem. Maybe they were having relationship issues. If as long as he or she ain't putting their hands on each other, it's not much you could do about that anyway. Maybe it's your spouse had a bad day at work. Maybe she's beefing with a coworker, or maybe he's beefing with a coworker. Okay, we can be supportive, but do we need to take that energy on? Not at all. Here's the other thing is when we allow things to take us away from our focus, then we wonder why we struggle and we stay stressed out. Here's a question I always ask my clients: the stress and the burdens that you're carrying, how many of them belong to you? Now think about it. Mama may call and tell you why, daddy's acting up, or that this happened, that happened. Your kids may call, your boss somebody may call, and the next thing you know, we're carrying all this weight on our shoulders. Ask yourself, the stress that you're feeling right now, how much of it actually belongs to you? If it doesn't belong to you, stop carrying it. So, in this time, disconnect, plan and organize, and stop carrying things that don't matter. There's a lot of things that do matter, but if we plan and if we strategize, then we can deal with it. The problem with a lot of us is that we don't plan, we don't strategize, and then we wonder why we're constantly feeling like we're in 10 different places. So after we disconnect, we re-energize ourselves. Sometimes sitting in silence is good. Sometimes not being around people. Whatever it is, you need to disconnect and replenish your energy. Plan and organize. The next thing is stop worrying about stuff that don't matter. Now, here's the next tip in these stressful times is that, I'll use meditation, prayer, whatever you want to call it. It's understanding that the energy that we put out or the energy we take in is how it's going to affect our day-to-day lives. So if you are not grounded mentally and spiritually in this time, in this climate, it's going to be tough to maintain because we can't carry this all on our own. So that's just a little nugget. Now, here's another thing in terms of when we talk about this day and time, we got, like I said, we got the pandemic. We have the political climate. We have the social climate. All of these things. Here's is the perfect time, believe it or not, is to create something new. Oftentimes, people in the midst of chaos will not only backtrack and do things that almost isolate ourselves and do things that are destructive. However, think about this. Before people came along, how did the forest replenish itself? It replenished itself by catching on fire. Think about that. This country's on fire, y'all. But here's the perfect opportunity to create something new. Here's why I say that. So if you already haven't seen what's going on, a lot of things are going away. Some of us has been put in positions that we had to sit still, right? Some of us panicked. Some of us fell into depression. Some of us became worried. And then there's a group of other ones said, you know what? Something new is going to come out of this. If you're a believer, meaning you believe in God, you believe in the Bible, and every other religion, this is the perfect time to renew yourself and to create something new. This isn't the time to go run and hide. This is the time to create something new. Now, what is that? Okay, what is it for you? I don't know. Is this the time to say, if you're an artist, to practice your music? Absolutely. The world is quiet. Is this the time to get in shape and all that stuff? Absolutely. And I'll use myself as an example real quick, is right when I decided to get at least in office, and start my own private practice, the COVID hit. And in fact, the day that the fire marshal came, he wouldn't shake my hand because the COVID had just hit and they started shutting things down. I could have easily, if most people would have agreed with me, to say, you know what, I'm not opening my doors, I'm gonna wait till the pandemic's over. But I decided to create something new. I decided to go along with my vision, and I have to tell you, God is blessed, and I work as a single practitioner every day, and I'm constantly filled with clients. My point is, I didn't isolate myself. I didn't run. I didn't hold on to the little pennies that I had, and I don't mean necessarily pennies literally, but it was a time to create something new and to step out and be new. So here's what I'm getting at. In this time, in this political climate, in this pandemic, it is now the time to create something new. Sometimes you have to destroy something and uncreate it to create something new. The world we knew up until 2019, maybe God said we got too complacent, so now we got to tear it all down and create something new. If you're not coming up with new ideas, new ways of doing things, new ways of thinking, then you're wasting your time. Now is the time to create something new. So, disconnect, spend time on things that are important but not urgent, which means we're going to plan and organize, right? We're not going to carry other people's burdens, and we need to create something new. Whatever that is for you. We, meaning people. Whenever this whole thing is over, whether it's the pandemic, the social stuff, which may never be over, but when we're out of this era, we're supposed to come out it as a brand new people. Follow me on that. We're supposed to come out of it new. And if you're a believer, you're supposed to come out it unscathed. So, on that note, I'm at my hour. I want to thank you guys for joining me on the podcast Indestructible Souls. You know, I had to pivot, but you know, it is what it is. Sometimes it happens. Next week, hopefully, I can have my friend Sharon Brandon on, and we could talk about, you know, everything we intended to talk about tonight from two different perspectives. And I want to thank you for joining me. You could check me out on Facebook. You could check me out on Twitter. What's the other one? YouTube, and all that good stuff. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Peace.